Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I am Adita Karkera, Chief Data Officer for the Government and Public Services practice with Deloitte. We are partnering with CDO Magazine today in a series of interviews of government leaders. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Kshemendra Paul. He's the Chief Data Officer for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Kshemendra, what a pleasure. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Adita. It's a pleasure for me to be here and talking with you and colleagues that would access this through CDO Magazine. So thank you so much.
I'm thinking all of this, tying it back to your vision of making it all data-driven. You created your data strategy back in January 2021, I believe. And so I guess I'm thinking that the audience might want to know, what does that data strategy mean to the veterans? How does that data strategy equate to references to the veterans? And would love to hear your perspectives on how that is making Veterans Affairs more data-driven and cultivating that culture.
Yeah, we have this great and unique public trust mission serving 18.5 million living veterans. And then you think about the pipeline of service members, really we have an equity from extension on duty at DOD, through the life cycle of, to transitioning into veteran status and then all the way to final honors. And we work very closely with our partners at DOD. And at every moment that matters on that journey, right, to be able to deliver delightful customer experience, the best possible outcomes, lifetime impact, like things like health span, economic outcomes, and the rest, it's critically important that we take all of the information we have and put it to use on behalf of veterans. We serve veterans individually, and we want to serve them as an enterprise. So that means bringing that data to bear in those transactions. We also want to reduce the time tax and burden and complexity for veterans dealing with the Veterans Affairs Department. In the past, it used to be that you have to show a form, a DD-214 is what it's called. It's a proof of service as a service member. And that was a key piece of eligibility for a Veterans Affairs benefit or service. But we get that information now authoritatively from DOD since 2015. So, we want to get to a world where a veteran doesn't have to show that proof of service. All they have to do is show us a driver's license or some identity, proof, and then we can go ahead and process benefits and service. We want to do even better, right? Veterans Affairs is all about choice. So we want to be able to be proactive to reach out to, veterans before they're veterans, or the service members, or as they're veterans, to give them informed choices at different stages in their life based on what we know about them. So they can make the best possible decisions for them, for their families, about using VA.
That's great. I love those examples because that really talks about how data is really turning things into making it easier for our citizens and our veterans. So I love those examples. Kshemendra, so when you started your journey with your data strategy in 2021, now we're kind of, May 2022. How has that journey been in kind of operationalizing your vision for the data strategy? Because, I hear a lot about CDOs focusing on their data strategy, and that's a great first step. And then it's like, how do you execute it? How do you operationalize it? So I'd love to hear your journey there, your successes, your challenges.
Yeah, and it's important to kind of put this in context of the coalition of folks across the department. I mentioned my partners in the Office of Information and Technology. I work very closely with counterparts in the department and the Veterans Affairs Administration, the Veterans Benefit Administration, different functional areas across the department, the NCA, and so it's a broad coalition of folks. And I'll highlight when the Secretary announced the data strategy in his inaugural testimony in front of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, he led off by talking about the talent that we have, the data management, health informatics, data analytics talent. And we have some of the leading talent around the country because of our historical, affiliation with leading research universities around the country. And that talent is spread out. And so there's a real big coalition of folks, and I'm privileged to be a functional champion for, and to help engage, and they're the community of folks, the lifeblood of VA that, will make our data lifeblood really fulfill its full potential. So progress. I've been here since September 2019 as we put the strategy out in early 2021. We've continued with initial key initiatives across the 5 goals of the strategy: stewardship, analytics, technology, people, and governance. and have built initial successes, initial momentum. We have some initiatives around data management, data analytics that are proving at, as pilot efforts with sufficient scale that we're teeing up opportunities to take that next step as we implement our roadmap. And speaking of the roadmap, we're very close to publishing the roadmap, which has about an 18-month horizon on it, 26 milestones, objectives and key results for a business case that will take us up to the next level of executing as an enterprise against the promise of the data strategy. And, my experience is not necessarily unique. I do want to give a shout out to my colleagues in the federal space. The CDO function in the federal space is maturing. It's early days for us still, but in the context of the federal data strategy, that was published in 2020 with a 10-year horizon. We're 2 years in, and it emphasizes data management maturity as the key metric. And so from a data management maturity perspective, we adopted the same thing as the core metric for fulfillment of our data strategies, enterprise data management maturity. And we're making progress, and we're going to measure that progress with DoD. So interesting, our biggest information sharing partner in the federal government is DoD for obvious reasons. We're doing a joint data management maturity assessment with them using the same framework, the Carnegie Mellon framework. And by doing it in a synchronized way, doing it jointly, it's going to provide greater confidence on both sides of that service member veterans journey for leadership to align resources and help scale to the next level. Now, I mentioned an 18-month horizon, so we're really very aware to not fall into the planning fallacy. We want to be agile as we execute, right, where we have objectives, goals, strategies, but we're also tying to real mission impact and, kind of taking a step, assessing, taking another step. So that's, I think, a big part of our journey.
Yeah, no, I applaud you for what you're planning and for making sure that roadmap is out there and still follow an agile methodology to ensure success and be realistic and practical as you approach all of these. As you touched on some of the key pillars, Kshemendra, I'm starting to think, there has to be a lot of effort involved in kind of bringing together the multitude of disparate data sources that you have available across Veterans Affairs. And in talking to other CDOs and in my own experience, that could easily become one of the bigger challenges of the CDO office. So I'm curious if you would want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges around data integration and data sharing. And has that been a challenge, or how is that going for you?
It is a challenge. It's a challenge for CDOs broadly. And it's a challenge at many levels, right? The policy and governance around information sharing agreements between agencies, even within intramural sharing, becomes a challenge. Working through the policy issues, like many organizations, maybe more than most organizations, VA has tremendous data assets, very diverse, very disparate, different generations of technology that host that data. So there's legacy IT issues. There's, just a variety of different issues. And so we try not to boil the ocean, though, right? So, key here is working backwards from prioritized mission requirements. From an analytics perspective, we use a framework called key analytic questions. So we try to really understand, what does leadership want to know from a policy analysis, strategy analysis perspective? What are the key priorities that they're looking at? And govern those, shape them collectively, right? And then look at what are the information resources, the data we need to answer those questions, and use that kind of a process to build, kind of curated data resources that are authoritative and become bigger in scope, utility, and would drive value through reuse of those curated data objects. So that's been a play that we've been running. And of course, that curation has to happen on different platforms. So, a lot of this is path dependent, right? You can't sort of predict it in advance. You just have to work the issues, and hopefully every day, every week, every month, you get a little bit more rational, and, it starts to work a little faster.
Thank you so much for that. And that is about all the time that we have today for chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your perspectives. And for the audience, please continue to visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you, Kshemendra.
Thank you, Adita.